So this is just a verse that I really go to a lot. And it's, you are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. So again, even that is saying, just loving your body is glorifying God. Think about that. So the next time you try to tear yourself down, talk about this, talk about that, you realize like, I'm not glorifying God by doing this because I am his vessel. And my life is actually dedicated to that, not necessarily what I look like. So next slide, please. So boundaries. Yes, this was another thing that I got when I was praying and thinking about what to speak about, was boundaries. Have any of you heard of boundaries? I know anyone here is a clinician who is works as a therapy or counseling, understands and knows what boundaries are. But would anyone like to just, yes. So if you want to add anything to this, boundaries, one of my favorite therapists or psychologists was Salvador Minuchin, and he did a lot of work around boundaries and family dynamics. And what boundaries are, ladies, are basically just our rules and principles that guide us about what we will and won't do in our lives. Honestly, I got the revelation about boundaries about 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, when I went through therapy myself, because I had to get my my master's in psychology. I thought I knew what they were. I thought I had mine on lockdown, and I didn't so much. And they're learned by your family of origin. So if you didn't, your family was rigid. She talked about this some, like disengaged, isolated, there's a lack of communication. That's probably what you were going to go into your relationships as. And you don't even have to think about it. It's just that's what you learned. That's how families work. You don't think like to speak up. You don't think to talk about your feelings because that's not what was modeled for you. And so the other type of family is diffuse or enmeshed. These are the families, and this is more what I kind of came from. There's little independence between family members. You know how it is, like mom's sad, the whole family has to be sad. Like everybody's like enmeshed. Like no one can have an emotion outside of the family unit, and if you do, like how dare you? And then there's clear boundaries, and this is what we all should strive for, where you get to decide by your own internal boundary, your own internal way to say what you will and won't do in your relationships. So there's different types of boundaries, and this has so much to do with loving ourselves, because if you don't have clear boundaries, and I think a lot of us struggle with this, I struggled with this myself in my marriage, you end up resentful. You end up doing things that you never wanted to do and you don't know why. You end up tired because you're trying to control things. You're trying to be in charge of everything. You're trying to keep, the status quo. Even though you know it doesn't work, you keep doing it. And it does take a lot of time and effort and learning on how to do this clearly for yourselves. But I thought this was so important to learn and to teach you guys about. Some of you could probably teach me some things about this even, but material boundaries. So I don't know if anyone's ever felt like people's always taking advantage of me. They're always trying to take my money. They take my car. They do this. They do that. The reason why a lot of times is you haven't set the boundary around that and said, I don't feel comfortable lending you $100 again, Uncle Joe. Like don't take the car. You didn't ask. And you don't feel like you have the voice to say no. And that's where you can really start to lose things that are important to you. Physical boundaries are more about how you regulate your space. So you know how, I'm sorry, I'm bad about this. Sometimes I give people hugs when they put out their hand and I shouldn't. Because they're trying to give a physical boundary and I'm like, because I'm a hugger, I can't help it. I try, but I'm trying as I'm learning more about boundaries to not, be Tiggering up in their space, But sometimes we don't learn that we can actually say no to a hug, that we can actually be okay, even not shaking a hand. That's a physical boundary. That's something where you actually have just this internal locus where you're like, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't want to hold everybody's hand, or whatever that is. That's a physical boundary. And anytime you grow up in abuse, in any abusive home, all of this goes out the window, and you never got the chance to choose this. And so don't feel bad if some of this is like, you're like, that's me. Like, that's a lot of us. We didn't realize that we had a choice to do something different. Mental boundaries. This is just more about like our thoughts and our values. How easily are we going to hold on to our opinions or value someone else's opinion? It's kind of like that's huge in your self-worth too, because if you don't think that your voice matters, if you never set a boundary and you let everybody just talk over you all the time, then you start to really internalize that and feel like, well, my voice doesn't matter, my opinion doesn't matter, everyone talks over me anyway. No big deal, right? But it is a big deal, and it affects, it's another piece of the puzzle taken away. And then sexual boundaries, this is huge, especially for women, because many women have been abused in this area and have not, have been raped or have been molested or have had things happen, and they never learned because they didn't have a chance that you can say no. And you can start something and not finish something. And remember all this Me Too stuff, all this stuff going on right now, it's all about that. How do you set that standard for yourself and stick by it and not feel like you have to apologize for that? That, if even women who are married or with your boyfriend, you can say no and not feel bad. If he's in the mood and you're not, it's okay. There's many women who don't feel like they have that choice. And they feel like, oh, I feel bad because I'm bad, I'm not. No, that is your choice. That is a boundary that you get to make. And then spiritual boundaries. And this is just, some of us have grown up in churches where we were like kind of almost shoved down our throats. Like we didn't have a choice about what we believed and what we didn't believe. Like, this is what it is. This is how it works. And you get to choose that as an adult. Whatever feels comfortable for you. You get to choose how much time you want to do in prayer, how much hours you want to spend at church, what makes you grow spiritually. And so that's boundaries in a nutshell. So making better boundaries is really just about loving yourself. And it's let me tell you, ladies, it's a process. I went through a really rough year last year, and I had to make some major changes in my marriage because I was taking on too much, and I was so scared to let go. So scared, like that everything was going to fall apart, that I started to fall apart. And I started to get really depressed, you guys. And I had to walk away from my job. I had to walk away from everything so that the power dynamic in my relationship could shift, and I could learn that it's okay for me to be taken care of. I don't have to be the caretaker all the time. You don't have to be the caretaker all the time. It's exhausting. And as women, we do it so much. And not everyone struggles with this, but a lot of us do. And we're angry and we're resentful at our partners and at our friends, but we're the one that keeps picking up the ball and keeps feeling like we have to keep it going and we have to keep it going. You don't. And that's one of the things I learned the most from, the 6 months of depression that I lived through last year, was that everything doesn't fall apart the way that we think it's going to when we start setting boundaries and we start saying no. And so when you say no to someone's expectation that you cannot meet, many times we do that. How many times have we tried to take on like that 50 cupcakes, the leader of a troop calls you the night before, I need 50 cupcakes by 7 a.m. tomorrow, and you got like a business board and you got all this stuff, and you take it on anyway, and you're cursing, it's 3 a.m., you're making the brown, you know what I mean, whatever, like, it happens. It's okay to say no. It's okay, and that's loving yourself. That's saying, I'm not capable, and even if I am, I don't want to right now. I don't need to add that to my plate. So when you learn that others' opinions of you do not have to make you angry, sad, frustrated, you feel better overall about yourself. This is a huge trap too, ladies. Like we get mad when people don't react the way we want them to, and when they don't value the same things we value, or if our husband doesn't like the dress we picked out. Oh, he's horrible. But you know what? If you like it, if you're like, dang, I feel good in this, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter really what that partner says. Oh, I don't like backless dresses. I don't like. Okay, you don't have to wear it. You know, I'll make sure I don't buy you a backless dress. You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, like, and that's loving yourself, because you're like, if I feel good and I feel like this is my power outfit, like, wear it, lady, wear it. You know. So when you only take responsibility for you, you don't have to feel guilty for not cleaning up another's problems. And this will free you up to be more available. You know, our lives are not meant to be in relationship so that we can save everybody around us. That's exhausting. And I don't know how many of you have felt that or are that go-to person in your family or in your friends. It's great to be that person, but you don't always have to be that person. And that's something I've learned. I didn't know that. Like, I was always just like that pillar, you know, that, you know, when someone broke down, I had to be there, and those of us in helping fields, we really have to watch that, because we're good listeners and we care and we love people, but you gotta love you first. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is actually loving people, because if you're all burned out and you're trying to help people and you're all broken down, you're not really helping them anyway. And you're not really helping that relationship, because that person's not learning what they need to learn. Like, it's like the parent whose kid crashes the car 4 times and they keep buying them a new car. I'm like, they're not learning anything. All they're learning is that there's no consequences for my behavior. And so that was just something that was really impressed on me. And then this last quote is, anyone heard of Brene Brown? She is amazing. Amazing. I suggest you get any book by her, honestly. And she says, daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others. The risk is worth it, and you are worth it. And I just wanted to thank you guys for your time, and I hope that this has just encouraged you to find better ways to love yourself and find that love that you might have lost over the years. Thank you so much.